2805. A draw is not a bad thing. So bishop e5. The kings approach the centre. Bishop g5. Now knight f5. So what are the plans for black in principle? You know, in principle there's a pawn majority on the queen side, but it's difficult to make use of that. White has the bishop pair, so good control of both colour complexes, the light and dark squares. G4, now knight d6. Black has a blockading point on d6 though. This pawn is not that vulnerable. Again, the bishop pair take care of most issues, whether it be passed pawns or not losing pawns. A lot of issues are solved more easily with that bishop pair. So knight e8, bishop c1. Now knight c7. Okay, the d5 pawn is under fire, and as well as a6. So the logical move would seem to be bishop c4, but actually, because of this particular position, bishop d3 was played, because here this is a little trap. If knight takes d5, that would be a disaster, because bishop c4 and now king e4, just winning that piece. So bishop d3 is played. Bishop d6, keeping the blockade. King e4. Now b5. So actually black is trying to mobilise that queenside pawn majority. King d4, now a6. So the black king needs to get a bit more towards the centre, and he does so with king e7. After check, king d7. Now bishop d2. So look at these bishops, you know, on both colours. They're very good, and like I had in that club game video a few videos ago, you know, it's nice to keep hold of that bishop pair. I'm just turning off Ribka here. So bishop g3. Now g5 was played. Check, check. Now knight e8. So this knight's kind of tricky, making use of d6. Maybe the f5 square soon. Bishop g4 check. Now bishop e6. So this avoids perhaps knight d6 to f5. The bishop maintaining control of f5. Also threatening horrible things like bishop g8 to try and win the poor h7 pawn. Check. And now knight c4. So hitting that bishop for the moment, not worried about bishop g8. And now the move bishop d6. So you might wonder now, why not bishop g8? I think this might run into a little trap, king f8. Well, we're just losing time, because takes king g7, it looks as though the bishop's trapped. So these weaknesses are not totally exploitable from either sides at the moment. Black has enough resources to cope with the threats. So king e4, a5. The pawns move a bit more. Bishop g4, bishop a3, offering to blind the bishop pair to exchange off the dark squared bishop, and actually Topalov agreed to that. So bishop takes a3, knight takes a3. Now king e5. Maybe you thought this is kind of dangerous, this idea, d6, and maybe try and crawl onto these dark squares to win that h7. But check interrupts that plan. Now not knight d6, king d6. Black stands fine, it seems, with this blockade, and only the light squared bishop now. So the positions become a bit simpler. Bishop e2, now knight a3. So supporting b5. h4, now check. And now knight b4, so forking a2 and d5. So black's winning a pawn, but I don't think it's enough to win. After bishop takes b5, check. King b3. Knight moves to b4. Now bishop e2, so Topalov doesn't mind going a pawn down here. After the knight takes d5, he plays h5, so he's liquidizing the pawns on the king side a little bit more. After knight f4, he takes on g6 and plays bishop c4, and here a draw is agreed. All white has to do is win, for example, the a pawn with his king, and then just sacrifice the bishop for that pawn to leave black with just king and knight versus king, which is a draw. So an interesting draw. Let's have a look in overview and summary. So the Gruenfeld without getting slaughtered, with an immediate b6 being played instead of knight a5. So b6, an interesting move. queen d2 and now bishop b7. So black is provoking white in the center, maybe to play like either d5 or e5. First the white rooks go to c1 and d1 though, and now d5 is played. So actually, out of interest, let's just check then, is this a critical variation? I'll stick Rubicon here to see if e6 was any good or something else here. So say queen b8, e6. I think f5 is mentioned by Rubicon as slight advantage for black, not for white, pardon me. But here e5 immediately, maybe there's a better move here. Not queen b8, it seems a bit passive actually. Queen b4, queen a3, these may be possible as better alternatives. Forget queen b8. So say rook c3, it looks as though it's harassing the queen, but queen a4, the queen's kind of annoying. This might be playable, but again it seems to be a slight advantage to white. I'm not 100% sure. So knight a5, bishop d5 is given, very tactical move. So bishop d5, rook c8. We have this kind of position, knight takes c3. I think white's going to end up with a small advantage maybe. Okay, so that's a long way off the game. So I was just curious there about the other provocation move, e5 instead of d5. Yeah. So d5. It seems not to give black a major issue. Ribka actually likes black here. Small advantage to black all of a sudden after knight e5. In fact, with the idea. So say bishop b3, then there's bishop a6. And if there's bishop b5, then again a6, and it seems to be okay for black. That's interesting. So say this position, and black, could just try for that bishop pair and play f5 here. That's an interesting try, perhaps. So anyway, in the game, after d5, knight a5, bishop b5. So what has white got here? White potentially has got a pleasant position if you can use that c6 square, but I think black's got things covered. The rook's coming off, simplification, and with that a lot of the tactical issues disappear. So queen e5, bishop d3 was played, supporting e4, knight c6. So coming into that d4 square, black's got nice control of d4 here. Bishop a6, a tactical move, but another tactical move in reply, threatening knight e2, and against that another tactical move threatening a double check with lethal consequences. So particularly on f6, e7 is not so good. So bishop takes d5, and we reach a simplified endgame where white's two bishops seem pretty useful, but black has the d6 blockade square, and black can also solve the issues. The pawns being fixed here doesn't seem to be a major exploitable weakness in the variations. With this g5 move, white wasn't able to take advantage of those fixed pawns. So one of the bishops comes off now after bishop a3. I guess I should also note if bishop f4 maybe and bishop d6, that's fine for black. Let's turn off Ribka there actually. So now we reach a position where Anand actually wins a pawn, but it's just not enough in this endgame, this simplified ending, where if white just gets the a pawn, he can just sacrifice the bishop for the g6, for the g pawn to draw. Hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.